Good afternoon. My name is Pheobe Suina, and I am a hydrologist and with the company High Watermark LLC. Over the last 20 plus years, I've had the experience of dealing and managing and mitigating post-wildfire flooding here in New Mexico. I'm from the pueblos of Cochiti and San Felipe along the Middle Rio Grande. And in my career here in New Mexico, I've had to work within various watersheds, over a dozen watersheds that have been impacted by a major wildfire. And those major wildfires have been Las Conchas, Pacheco, Cerro Grande, Dome, and other fires here in New Mexico. And with that, I want to share, and I hope to share some information as we enter the monsoon season in 2022 here in New Mexico, after some major forest fires that we've had over the last few months. Those being Hermit's Peak, Calf Canyon Complex Fire, Black Fire, Gavilan Canyon Fire, Nogal, Cerro Pelado, and others that we've had here in New Mexico. And I hope that this information is helpful to everybody in regards to what to expect, what we could do on a personal level, and also to make sure that we work together as we all navigate the next few months during monsoon seasons. Okay. So I would like to go over a series of slides regarding what I've seen in my professional career throughout my life, and in particular, what's been going on here in the last few months, and what we can expect or what we need to plan for and prepare for. So on the slide here, this is a portion of the Hermit's Peak fire footprint. And this is what we call a burn severity map. And the U.S. Forest Service has recently produced this map for everybody. And what we see in the map here are two major watersheds. That's the Gallinas and the Tecolote. And based upon general estimation of acres burned, we're looking at approximately 64,000 for Gallinas, and Tecolote at approximately 51,000. And this is the area along Beaver Creek, and then the tributary to the Gallinas watershed called Porvenir. This is right as you enter into the U.S. Forest Service area, between the U.S. Forest Service area and private lands in that particular tributary. So you can see here the burn severity on extreme slopes is very high. In particular, on the slope, when I went out to do a preliminary site visit, I could see that we have such a severe burn on this slope that we have root ball holes. Those root ball holes come when there's an extreme or high severity fire coming through a particular area, and the entire tree will combust, including the root below the soil. So you have these holes underneath the ground. And so these slopes are extremely dangerous because you don't know if there's actually a cavity underneath the ground. And as I stood there, you could see these small cavities becoming evident as small wind events or shifts in the soil have exposed that hole underneath the ground, which makes these particular areas very hazardous. And I know folks have asked, can we go up there and take the trees down? And one of the concerns is for personal safety. If anybody were to go up on these hillsides and hill slopes where we have, in particular, high burn areas where we do have a root ball. And I want to be specific on that because As this picture shows, this is in the bottom of a canyon. And if there were a flow event where you see me standing in the picture and I were to try to get out of the bottom of the canyon, the one place I would try to go to would be on the side slopes. But again, we all have to be careful if somebody's in this particular area or in a similar canyon, that there are those dangers and hazards of root ball holes. Thank you. So I wanted to share what we've seen in other canyon systems and canyon areas impacted by major wildfire. In this particular graphic, we see the Las Conchas burn severity map, and I want to pay special attention to Cochiti Canyon. So Cochiti Canyon for the Las Conchas fire, total acreage of burned area within Cochiti Canyon watershed was approximately 20,000 acres. And I want to note that as I go through the slides, we did have a high burn severity where we had about 9,000 acres at high severity burn and another 5,000 acres of high severity burn. And I just want to note that as we look at this burn severity maps, and if you recall the burn severity map for Gallinas, some areas look very similar to what we see here in the Las Conchas burn severity maps for Cochiti Canyon. And again, as you saw in the Gallinas picture, this is a picture of Cochiti Canyon, an area that was devastated by the Las Conchas fire, where you see extreme slopes and you see the black toothpicks on the slope sides. And much like the Cochiti Canyon, we also have Santa Clara Canyon, which is approximately 15,000 acres. Same fire, Las Conchas, 15,000 acres were burned. And as you see on the screen here, 30% was high, moderate was about 47%. And so that's a large part of the 15,000 acres that was burned in this particular canyon by Las Conchas. And again, I want to note the 15,000 acre footprint of the burned area in this watershed. And if you will note as well, the boundary of the burn area is approximately 8 to 10 miles away from the bottom of that funnel as it enters and intersects with the state highway at Santa Clara Pueblo. Thank you. And again, Santa Clara Canyon in a high to moderate burn intensity in that canyon after the Las Conchas fire. You can see in this picture, severe slopes, high burn areas. In those pictures look very similar to some burn areas in the Hermit's Peak area. Thank you. So let's stay in Santa Clara Canyon. About a month after the fire in Santa Clara Canyon, we were right into the monsoon seasons in 2011. At the time, we didn't have US gauges up for the Las Conchas after the Las Conchas fire. So we had to depend on NEXRAD radar and radar data and information after rain events to get some estimate as to how much rain was falling or fell in these canyons. So you see here, this is a NEXRAD, and you see the footprint of Santa Clara Canyon up there. On one portion, the northern portion of that canyon, it wasn't the entire canyon, just that one portion of turquoise, it fell 1 inch over an 8-hour period. Thank you. So that 1 inch, 10 miles down, 8 to 10 miles from the edge of the burn scar, near the state highway that goes through Santa Clara Pueblo, we saw the debris flow, or Santa Clara governor leadership and the community members saw the debris flow. And this is what it looked like. 10 miles from the burn scar, heavy logs, thick black water coming down, and also a lot of smaller debris. And as you look at this, please note that there's also green trees coming down, because what will happen is those trees that may have survived in the fire in the bottom of the floodplain will also be impacted by the flooding and debris flows off the sides of the canyon. Thank you. Again, this is that same event. This is a picture courtesy of Governor Chavarria from Santa Clara Pueblo. And I apologize, I just want to note that I should have put a note courtesy of Santa Clara Pueblo governor and leadership. But this shows up in the canyon, again, in the floodplain, the entire floodplain, what we say is called activated. It is out of its normal channel, and it has jumped the banks and spread out across the entire floodplain. So in this picture, you can see, again, some live trees there about midway in the picture, and you see other large debris floating down the canyon. Again, this is just up in the canyon in the bottom of the floodplain. Thank you. And this was the aftermath after those storm events. So this is a picture to try to get some comparison before the flooding. So we have a road going, one road into the canyon, one road out of the canyon. And so you can see that one road, all the large boulders, debris, that road being severely impacted. And what's really hard to see in this picture is the size of those rocks. So those aren't, 6 inches in size. Those are very large rocks, probably 36 inches in size or more, that have fallen on the road. And that makes that road very difficult and impassable after just one flood event. Okay. There's another picture here. And again, trying to get a good idea of pre and post. Again, you see the amount, size of the rocks and debris on that road. And this is, again, one road in, one road out. And so if a road gets impacted, it is not that you can just move a few twigs or a few 6-inch in diameter small boulders or rocks. These are very large in diameter. Thank you. And here's another picture. And you can see how things can mobilize. That structure held up that small culvert, and actually that's not a small culvert, that's probably a 36-inch to 48-inch culvert, so it's not small. But it held it up and it deposited it right there. And it's really hard to determine how the debris is going to get hung up. A small structure like that can hold up debris, and then the water flows a different way. As you can see here, though, the road that was there before is now the bottom of the floodplain. And the river is actually on the pre-flood picture way to the other side of the canyon. So now you can see how this road also became, again, activated in terms of a flood channel or flow line of the water and debris. Thank you. Now to Cochiti Canyon. Cochiti Canyon on August 21st, you can see there was heavy rain. Again, it wasn't widespread at the top of the watershed, which was actually part of the most severe burn, but rather midway down in the watershed. And it wasn't the red, it was the yellow. And we got 1.7 inches of rain in an 8-hour period. And so as we go forward on the next slide, this is what happened. And that rain cloud rained miles above this location. And this is a picture that I took. It actually comes from a video, but I was in an adjacent canyon trying to get a hold of the family and their friends that were in the bottom of the canyon, trying to prepare for a flood and trying to install Jersey barriers, install sandbags, move stuff out of the floodplain, pack up valuables from their house that was in the bottom of the floodplain that day. And I saw the cloud above this particular point in the watershed. The people in the bottom of the watershed could not see the rain that was falling above them. I got a hold of one gentleman, Martin, and told him, please get out of the canyon, and to let everybody else know. As I zoomed over to the canyon from an adjacent canyon, when I got there right as the flow began to come out of the canyon. And so this is the beginning picture, and I also have a video. This is a video of the next day, August. Again, it was raining up in the watershed, was a light sprinkle here. You can see the intensity of the flow, the black ash, the large debris. There's actually a trailer floating down in this debris. Large trees, you can see the Jersey barriers, how they become inundated. And then as the video goes on, they look like little rubber duckies going down the flow. And large trees across. And I want to also reiterate, this is a normal stream of about 5 to 8 feet in width, maybe at times at maximum depth, 8 inches to 12 inches. And it turned out to be a width of over 300 feet across the entire floodplain. It jumped the main flood channel and went across the entire bottom of the canyon. Continued to this degree of flow for about 1 hour. Downstream of this, we have Cochiti Dam, which I do have other pictures that show how that Cochiti Dam, which is a very large structure, at one time was the largest structure, earthen filled dam in New Mexico. It was at that point finally large enough to contain all the sediment, debris, and water that was coming off these canyons. Thank you. So now, as we've seen the video of Cochiti Canyon flooding, that flood event was approximately post-event. We went and did a survey, and it was over 24,000 cubic feet per second, CFS, coming down out of the watershed on that, just over an inch and 1.7 inches of rain in the upper watershed. And what's unique about this, and I want to share this with everybody, is at this point in the watershed, the water came out of what we call a box canyon. So it's a part of the watershed where there's some confinement in the flow and the width of the watershed. And it's equivalent to sticking your finger over the end of a hose. So when you want the water to you're watering your lawn or your trees or whatever you're watering in your field, and you stick your finger over the hose and it shoots out, well, that's what a box canyon can do in a large watershed. It's a constriction area. And so the water debris really gets that confined energy to then shoot out of that particular feature or part of the watershed. And that's another thing to know as folks know their watersheds, to know what's upstream of them. And that can happen on a bridge. on a culvert, or even if there's a flood dam that gets hung up in the middle of the watershed. Those become pinch points in the system. And once they break or go beyond that pinch point, there's an acceleration in the flow and velocity, and that energy shoots down the canyon. And that's just how the flow dynamics happen in these major wildfire, post-wildfire flows. So I want to also take us back. As I shared earlier, Guyana's 64,000 acres. And please remember Cochiti Canyon, that video I showed you, the pictures of Santa Clara Canyon, those were only at 20,000 acres. Santa Clara Canyon, approximately 15,000 acres. And Guyana's is at over 60,000 acres. Tecolote is over 50,000 acres. So I just want to be aware and share with our New Mexico citizens, our community members, what you see here today in Guyana's watershed, severe slopes, we do have hydrophobic soil. I have put my eyes on it, looked at it, and I can share what I've seen over the last 2 decades. There is hydrophobic soil in these areas on severe slope. And what that means is when the water falls on that soil, it does not soak in. So if the water does not soak in, that one little raindrop does not soak in, it's gonna run off. It's gonna run off, and once it's on that extreme slope, it can gain energy, and then it gets into a flow line, and then that increases the energy of that one water drop off these slopes. And I've read studies over the last couple of decades, including over the last couple of weeks, just to refresh my understanding and knowledge. And I just reviewed a study from 2018 that once it gets hydrophobic, possibly less than 10% gets retained in the soil, conservatively. So if we can think about it, that means 90% of that water and rain coming off the slopes will flow downstream. And normally when we have a healthy ecosystem, a sponge in our mountains, we may retain 50%, 60% of that water. So the effect of a major wildfire on the landscape in this amount of acreage is very impactful and is something very different than what we see even on large rainfall events that we've experienced, like in 2013, when we had a lot of rain in the New Mexico area. So what do we do? What do we do here in the next few weeks, months, as we enter monsoon season? Be aware of the weather and the rain in the area. For a lot of the folks that live in Mora County, San Miguel, Taos County that are affected by the burn scar, down south in the Black Fire, down south in Ruidoso, in the Cerro Pelado areas, Cooks Peak fire area, a lot of the folks know how those clouds move. Be aware and make yourself informed of what's going on in the area as we enter monsoon season. And if you are in the bottom of a canyon, be especially aware. And if you're in the bottom and downstream, please be aware of what's going on that day. And normal monsoonal events, again, I say normal, everything is unexpected, but normal monsoonal events happen in the afternoons and evenings here in New Mexico. So in that time, be especially aware of your surroundings. And if you are in the bottom of the canyon, know your high points, know your canyon bottoms, know where you are. And as I shared in some of those pictures, if you are immediately adjacent or downstream of some of those severely burned areas, know that if you have to go to high ground, that high ground is safe to go to. And having experienced dozens, if not hundreds, of post-wildfire flow events and been in the canyon at very high points, I want to share with you that what I've experienced is there's a smell as that debris, ash, and material move down. When it's mixed with the water and it's mobilizing down the canyon or down the floodplain, there's a distinct smell of ash, and you can smell it. So that's one indication. If you're in the bottom and you smell something, it may be some of the ash and debris moving. And then you'll hear the noise, especially in those box canyon areas. We have, like in Gainas, below Trout Springs confluence. It's a very restrictive box canyon area. There's a lot of rock on the sides. It will feel like and listen and hear like a freight train coming down. The material will be bouncing off the sides of those rocks, and it's a very loud sound. And then of course your visual senses. So when you see that flow, you will see it moving out of the normal flood channel, which means on the side of the banks. And those first flows, I will tell you, it moves very slow because it's heavy with those debris and logs and rocks and ash. But it can be seconds, if not minutes, before the entire floodplain is completely activated. And so just be aware of that. Again, don't, be very respectful and aware of your surroundings and know where you are at if you are in the bottom of the canyons. And last thing, at least for right now, as we enter into a couple of days where we expect rain in New Mexico, is be prepared, because as I showed in the pictures, roads that are in and out of the canyon bottoms and watersheds may be damaged by flood events. So even if you make it to high ground, like I showed in that video of Cochiti Canyon, even if you make it to high ground, the road may be damaged. You may have large boulders on the road, may make it impassable by a vehicle or normal vehicle that you may have used going up. So just be aware of that. And with that, I just want to reiterate, I know the unpredictability of the next few days and the next few months with the monsoon season is very high. But I believe, and I've seen, whether it's after Las Conchas, after Cerro Grande, after the Pacheco fire, if we can all work together. And I can share with you what I've seen is state government, federal government, local government, local community members, concerned citizens, all working together. It's going to be so important as we navigate the next few days to the next few months after a major wildfire. I've seen some of the homes and areas that have been burned, and it's very heartbreaking. But as long as we continue to work together, I know tensions are high and emotions are high, but we must work together to continue to navigate and keep each other safe, and just do our best as we continue to navigate this wildfire season and the post-wildfire season. Thank you.